I think more so than anything, what we're seeing in the corporate world is that employers don't run the show. They don't. And if you really look at it, I think when you start to see really good cultures around the country in the corporate world, they realize that the employee comes first.
Welcome to The Follow-Up from Premier Speakers Bureau, featuring in-depth conversations with the world's most in-demand keynote speakers.
I'm Brian Lord, president here at Premier Speakers Bureau. I'm excited to have, I'm a huge football fan, so I'm excited to have on three-time Super Bowl champion, five-time Pro Bowl selection, and part of the Dallas Cowboys Ring of Honor, Darren Woodson. After retiring from the NFL, Darren worked as a football analyst for 14 years at ESPN. He's transitioned, big word for him, his leadership skills into the commercial real estate industry, tech industry, where he's currently a managing principal at Cresta Global, Inc., and he's also really active in community sports, the C5 Youth Foundation of Texas, and several other organizations. So Darren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Brian, thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate the time.
Well, speaking of that, this is so timely. You know, there's so many people right now in the corporate world, personal life, everything else, that are going through transitions. Yeah. You know, they've whether it's transitioning from work environment to virtual back to work, or changing jobs. You know, we've had so many people go through that. Or even if you're still at the same company, what you're doing may have changed. You've transitioned to something completely new. So you're somebody who went college to pro, and then to ESPN, business owner, so many different things. How do you handle transitions?
I think, first of all, I've always had to reinvent myself. So getting to know who I am and what I can accept and what I can't accept, one. I mean, I think a lot of us always want to point the finger to say, you know, what's out there, you know, what's going to happen here, what's the disruption, and they're pointing their finger at what's going to happen. For me, I've always had to point it back to myself and say, hey, is this something that I really am passionate about? If I'm not passionate about it, I'm not putting my time into it. You know, I have a set of core values that I live by. And if they don't meet my core values, then, you know, why go down that road? Because I'm not going to give you all the effort that's needed to be successful. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused. Instead of looking outside, look inside and figure out what you want. Because we only know you, the person in the mirror is the one who tells you every day what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And I think that's where you start first. And then understand that you're going to have some humility through the process and laugh at yourself. Because I can remember, Brian, going from one transition from the NFL after 13 years and then going into ESPN as an analyst. I had no background in journalism at all, never spent any time on TV. ESPN throws me right on the set first day, and I can't tell you where the cameras are. There's someone talking in my ear. I'm fumbling all over the place. I have my buddies and my mom. Even my mom is calling me and telling me, son, I don't know what you're doing, but you are terrible.
You gotta love those moms. They're gonna be honest with you.
You gotta love them. Just be honest. But you can't laugh at yourself and have some humility and then start to think, okay, how can I get better? If this is what I want to do, I better go get some coaching. And that's the first thing I did when I made that transition. It was a hard transition. I went through some embarrassment, but at the same time, I figured out that the only way I was going to do this is if I held myself accountable and brought on people that can teach me through it. And I think that's what we all have to do is if you're transitioning into a new role, if you're not happy with your job and you're looking to move on, get to know yourself and then figure out, you know, what you want to do and how you want to set up the processes to get there.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. Like, you know, you assume there will be some coaching and guidance. I mean, ESPN is the worldwide leader in sports.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't give you a coach?
No, they didn't. They don't just give you a coach. You have to ask, because listen, there's a lot of guys, and I'll tell you, you know, there's some guys that are at ESPN that are naturals. Ryan Clark, coming out of the league, coming out of the NFL, he's a natural. And he's been studying journalism since he was at LSU. And there's some other guys that are like that. And I think ESPN expects you after watching you do interviews. And it's one thing when they're interviewing and you have the mic and you're just talking football, your team specific, and that's pretty easy. But when you have to talk about the Indianapolis Colts and who the GM of the Indianapolis Colts is and who the GM for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, it gets a little bit, you know, you get a little bit outside of yourself. And again, I had to go hire a coach to help me. And it was an outside coach outside of ESPN.
I know with you, with your jobs, whether it's ESPN, college, pros, whatever it may be, you've had a lot of coaches. With transitions, I think maybe you had maybe like 5 coaches for
Yes.
the Cowboys,
Yep.
and what makes a good coach? What makes a good leader? And I'd love to hear like your favorite, maybe famous coach, and then maybe that like skill coach that nobody's ever heard of or few people have heard of that really
Oh,
resonated
yeah.
with you and why.
Yeah. There was the one coach that I had was that really changed my perspective on how to be a leader was Bill Parcells. And Bill Parcells was a coach who coached the Giants, coached the Patriots for a number of years, was Bill Belichick's mentor. And Parcells came in my last 2 years with the Dallas Cowboys. And then at that time, I had done 11 years in the NFL. I thought I knew everything, and had been a captain for 10 of those 11 years at the time before Parcells got there. And he taught me a different way of how to lead. And that way was, one-on-ones. He was big on taking the players outside of the locker room to the coffee shop down the street, and to get them outside of their natural environment and get to know the players individually. He did that the first day I met him. He and I stepped outside and went to go have a cup of coffee, which I wasn't even a coffee drinker, but he was like, "This is what you're going to do. We're going to go spend this time together." And he wanted to know who I was. He wanted to know my family, how many kids I had. And that's one thing that I've taken throughout the process of being a leader those last couple of years I had with him. And then I've taken that same type of model into the corporate world as well. Like when we bring on new employees, we got to get to know them. And it comes from from up top to the managerial role on down, of getting to know those that are inside your office, because the culture it has to be in a way. If you're looking for success, you have to build the right culture to get everybody on the same page. And what's best when you can actually sit down at the coffee machine inside the office and ask, Rachel, how's her husband John doing? How are the kids doing? And knowing those kids by name, that to me is leadership. And the one thing Parcells told me, he said, the one thing you have to do as a leader is you have to like people. I mean, it's that simple. If you don't like people, you can't lead, because leaders are going to have to pour themselves into folks. They're going to have to spend time and put time into others. And if you don't want to do that, you can't be in this role. And that's the God honest truth. And it's that simple. It was that simple. And I've always felt like I've always had everyone else's best interest at heart. And it allowed me to, take some of that, what he taught me, and really apply it, and not just apply it, but be intentional about applying those rules and taking people outside of their environment to have those meetings.
Yeah, and then, so is that something that other people took to heart as well? When other leaders on the team, because obviously you're a team captain, that's probably why you were one of the first people that he took out.
Yeah.
But did you see that filter in through the organization?
It didn't filter into the organization as a whole. The guys started to notice that I was doing it, because I just started scheduling in the off season, just scheduling time with guys. It really showed itself on the corporate side, because when I started, when I got involved with commercial real estate and had a team, now that team is of 85 people in our office. It's for my partners. My partners saw that I was doing it. I'm the one who brought it into the office, and now the partners are doing it. And it's just a part of what we do. We have a sales force that tells you who everyone is, who their spouses are, husband, wife, how many kids they have, what grades the kids are. And it's a cheat sheet. Early on, it's kind of like a cheat sheet to when I'm walking around the office. If it's someone's birthday, I can just rattle it off. Yeah, it's great to see your kid. Sammy's birthday today, blah, 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 blah. And I don't have to look at it. I can just get it and go. But, those are just some of the perks that you just have to learn along the way that means so much. You may not think they mean a lot. It means, we're not casual by just saying, "Hey, how are you, Brian?" No, it's, yeah. "Hey, Brian, how's your wife, Sandy, doing?" Blah, 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 blah.
Some of the things that you've gone through with change and everything else, when you went, what are some of the difficult transitions? So obviously you have somebody who's like a great leader, like Parcells, who comes in and does that, and you had a lot of them on that team. Who were some of the other player leaders that you had that you really looked up to?
I played with a guy named Michael Irvin. Now, Michael Irvin is half crazy, Brian, and you probably know this by just watching him on TV.
Yeah, he's a wide receiver.
He's a wide receiver, loud
yeah.
mouth, flamboyant, wears a bright colored shirts and suits and all, and talks loud. But when I first got into the league in the NFL, I watched a man work harder than anyone. I've always prided myself on being a hard worker and being diligent about the game and being a professional. Michael Irvin outworked me triple the time. And it was a good understanding for me. It was a humbling understanding for me, because I sat there and watched this guy work out early in the morning, and then he'd run routes with the quarterback in the morning. And then he'd come back later on, he'd work out again, and he'd run routes by himself to work on his hands and his technique and all those type of things. And it was just he led by example. And was he loud? Yes, but we watched him put the time in, and that to me was very inspiring, because his thought process was, I can't get there unless I drag you guys along, unless you see me put the work in. And that's saying something to me, and that goes across all boundaries. That doesn't matter what you're doing. Even as a parent, if you're putting the work in, your kids will see it. If you're consistent every single day and you're just showing up, people will see and they'll recognize. I have a young man, and I don't want to get off that, but I have a young man in my office who in the commercial real estate, I have 35 brokers within the office. And, there's a few guys that come in, guys and girls that come in early in the morning, but this one's in particular, his name is Clint. Clint comes in the office every day at 7:15 a.m. and he stays until 7 p.m. at night. He is the most consistent person that I know within that office, and he's only 32 now. So he started in the office 25 years old. I've watched this kid progress over time, and the one thing that's always been obvious is, because he's been so consistent, and where he is, we bring him in on deals because he's there. Just because he's available, he's getting on deals. And that's something that I've had to teach my kids. The same thing is, if you just show up, good things will happen. It's not going to happen in your first 4 months. You don't expect it. Maybe it's a year and a half, but in a year and a half time, if you just keep chopping that wood, here it comes. And that's, man, to me, that's like the best advice that I can give any young man, young woman is, just be consistent and show up, and people will recognize it.
No, that's great. I love it. One of the things too, I know that you talk about, a lot of people ask you about, especially being somebody who's such a hard worker. How would you deal with burnout, or how do you deal with that now, or if that's something that's happening? Because that's something that's just going around so much in the corporate world right now. But how would you deal with burnout?
I always hear people say, I'm grinding. I'm just grinding and I'm grinding. I don't think grinding is good for you. Honestly, I don't think that's something that you should be proud of, that you have to actually grind every day. Grinding to me means, well, I'm doing things against my will, things that I really don't care to do, but I gotta go do it. I think the one thing that I've always looked at is find your passion. It's got to be something that you're doing. You're not doing it for the money. It's, what is the passion that's right in front of you, that you're willing to go through whatever it is to do it. That's, to me, is part of, being successful, is, finding it, that niche, knowing what it is, and then moving forward with it. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. So we did get, one of the great things about interviewing Darren Woodson is, if you put out on LinkedIn that you're trying to get some questions, you'll get some back. So a couple of questions here. This one's from Dr. George Lucas, not the Star Wars guy. How is starting a business different in 2022 than when you first started in business?
Oh man, I tell you what, it's been difficult. It really is. And to those entrepreneurs that are out there, man, God bless you. Seriously, I mean, it's, things have changed. There's a lot of, diversity and inclusion has become a part of it, and accepting And we've had to become more accepting in within our office, and being more transparent and having conversations. I think more so than anything, what we're seeing in the corporate world is that employers don't run the show. They don't. And if you really look at it, I think when you start to see really good cultures around the country in the corporate world, they realize that the employee comes first. Those that are showing up every day, the employee come first. How do I treat my employees? Like if my employees are sitting and telling me that their needs are, I need to be at Starbucks early in the morning at 7 o'clock to get some work done. Or, hey, I can work from home and get this done. I need to have an open ear to hear that. I can't shut it down. I think there was a time in the past where it was my way or the highway. and everyone was always on pins and needles because the employer controlled every situation. Now, with all the labor issues that we've had over the past, now with the competition that's out there, you just don't, most of the people that are in the workforce right now, they have other opportunities because there's so many opportunities that are out there. You have to get the right culture, and the only way you can get that is if you listen to what the employees are saying to you. Stop thinking that you control it. You don't. They'll tell you, hey, we need to, we would love to have certain things within the office. We would love to have a time where, if I need to stay home, maybe do a hybrid system and work from home a couple of days. Get to know who they are and then understand that, listen, those might be opportunities where you're gonna have to bend and give, but don't think that you can sit there today and play hardball. It doesn't work that way anymore.
So next one, this is from Shane Wells of JCB North America, who also claims he was a hard-hitting high school safety back in the day, which I'm sure one thing I've learned working with professional athletes for 20 years, they love hearing about people's high school football days.
Oh, anyway, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any feelings in business or leadership since leaving the Cowboys? Are there any feelings in business or leadership since you've left the Cowboys that compare to the feeling of winning a Super Bowl?
Oh man, yeah, we just went. Look, that's a good one, Brian. Who is it? James asked that question.
Shane Wells.
Shane asked that question. Look, that's a hard one. So, look, I think there's something about winning a championship or winning a Super Bowl that can never be taken away. There's of course, the joy of accomplishment, but it's also the relationships that allowed you to get there. And I can remember a time when my first one in '92 and winning a championship, just being around those guys and knowing that all the sweat and tears you put in, think about, everybody watches us play on Sunday, but what they don't see is Monday morning when you're banged up and you can't walk and your wife is helping you get to the tub, or, your kids are sitting there watching you with, turf burns and ankle injuries. And, you're going through this you're just like anyone else in this world on Monday through, Saturday and then Sunday's game. But what they don't see is just the time you put in at practice and watching film and spending time with your teammates and being there from 6 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at, 8 o'clock at night. I mean, and building those relationships, and you're doing it, and 52 other guys in that locker room are doing the exact same thing that you're doing. So it's it's commitment to this excellence that, that I'll never forget. I'll never forget when I was down and out in the locker room and guys are picking me up after, I gave up a touchdown, and guys was like, hey man, encouraging me to get there. Those are things you just never forget. So I don't know if I will ever have that feel of walking down the tunnel and you have goosebumps because you're about to go into one of the biggest games of your life, man. That I don't know if I can get that feeling back, but what I can get in the corporate world is, we just went through my commercial real estate firm just went through an acquisition, and it was one of the greatest moments of achievement that myself and my partners had gone through, and it was just phenomenal, man. When we inked the deal, got it done, just we changed lives, man. There's a lot of lives that change, and our employees are now shareholders. Big time shareholders, and I watched lives. I watched people cry because they never had these opportunities for wealth. Yeah, and that was a huge enjoyment for me as well.
That's awesome. You can tell you do like people. You've lived.
Oh, look, yeah. Yeah.
So next one here from Steve Foudy. Has there ever truly been such a thing as work-life balance in your career experiences?
Hell no. No. And no, don't let anybody ever tell you that there's a work-life balance. Man, I just don't believe that there really is. I think when you become balanced, you just become mediocre. I think look, I'm a firm believer that I'm built a little different. And I have some friends who are, that are successful, that are built a little different. I'm type A, I burn hot. I mean, I just, there's some things that I want, and I know I'm half-ass crazy. I mean, there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So, balance is not a part of, look, my core values are my faith and my family. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's my core values. And I have other ones that come along with it, but those two are right in front and center. And I'm not going to let anything come in between my faith and my family. And then from there, it goes on. But I just think that in balance for me, it leans really high on my family and my faith. And then down here is, okay, if it doesn't interrupt with, 1 and 2, then I'm going hard at it. Mm-hmm. But I just don't believe that there's a balance that's out there that you can have this, work balance, because everything's always forever changing, even in the job situation, and here's the balance for me, Brian. I have to get up in order for any type of balance. I have to get up every day at 5:15, 5:20 to get a workout in before I take my son or have breakfast with my son before I take him to school. And then when I'm at work, now here it is, I'm going 100% at work. But then at 4:30, here again, I'm gone. I'm out. I'm going to go spend, coach my son's baseball team, his basketball team, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And in those situations, there's never really a balance. My balance is, hey, my family's going to come first, and I got to adjust to that. And then whatever happens from there.
Next question from Tom Banansky. I'd be interested to hear what his personal motivation was that he had to grow into the football player he became, and subsequently, if that same inner drive is what fuels his success in business. Seems pretty close to what we were just talking about, but
I did. But I think, look, I think where I get it from, man, where, similar to what the question is, where I get it from is that I've watched my mom work 2 jobs. I'm a project kid, Henson Projects, Phoenix, Arizona, then moved to the west side of Maryville area in Phoenix. I watched my mom work 2 jobs for 38 years. Mm-hmm. And in watching her sacrifice and give her time for 4 kids and me being the youngest, it just showed me, man, what sacrifice is all about. And I'm a firm believer that I only have so many years on this earth. I only have why not burn hot and do what I want to do and get and accomplish the things and not have fear out there. Because I've watched a woman without fear do it for 4 kids in the hardest environment. And hey, if she can do it, man, I can't complain, brother. Yeah. I cannot complain.
Yeah. No, I had one of those moms too. So that's awesome. This question is for Mirjana Novkovic. What's your take on the importance of the huddle in business and life?
Oh man. Well, look, that's the question. That is something that there's a reason why I left ESPN in the time I did in the 13 years I was there. I always felt like when I was in the NFL, there was that huddle, there was that locker room presence where you were part of a team atmosphere, and there was accountability partners, and people lifting you up and you're lifting people up. There's that huddle, if that's what she's talking about. And I think that's been special. So when I went to ESPN, there was no huddle. It was me and the camera, and it was me, doing my own homework, watching film by myself, and then going up on camera and then talking about it. But I never felt like I lost that feeling of that team, that huddle, that, accountability. And it wasn't until I, started with got involved with my commercial real estate firm and becoming a partner and working in teams that I get that feeling back. And I think that's the greatest feeling, man. I mean, I don't think Brian, I don't think I've ever accomplished anything in my life by myself. I really don't. I don't think there's not one goal that I've accomplished that someone along the line didn't like lift me up when I fell down or give me a break, or see me suffering and open a door for me. I just, even to this day, and I've had some good successes and good wins and all, but there's always been someone along the way within that little huddle that's, hey, provided me a lift.
Great. 2 more questions, both from people here. So I say the best for last. So one, Brian Palmer, who's been in the industry like 40 some years here. He wants to know what still hurts.
Brian, who said that?
Brian Palmer.
Brian Palmer. What still hurts? Well, I just had my 11th surgery 8 weeks ago. So I had shoulder surgery, a half a replacement on my left side about 9 weeks ago.
Yep.
My feet hurt every once in a while. Again, like I haven't had any surgeries below the waist, right? No knees, no ankles, which I've been blessed to not have.
Yeah.
But my feet hurt in the morning still when I wake up. Every once in a while, my neck will go out. And I'm one of the guys that actually left in good shape. One of my great friends is Charles Haley, who I just saw yesterday and spent half a day with. He's got a rod in his back. He's got both knees replaced. He's about to get his elbow fixed here in the next week, and he's got to get his neck done next year. So it's like, I'm mad. I have no complaints.
That's why you stay as far away from the line as you can. That's right. Why you got to be like a receiver, safety,
a wide receiver, a kicker.
So much smarter.
How about a kicker? Long snapper? Yeah. Yes. Push my kids in that direction. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. And so last one, this one comes from Texan, lifelong Cowboys fan, Sean Hanks. What team did you like beating the most?
Oh man, Sean, I'm telling you, when I first got into the league, this has changed over time. But when I first got into the NFL, in '89, I think the Giants won the Super Bowl. In 90, or is it 89, 90, one of those two. But I know in 91, there was like 3 straight years, either the Giants, it was 2 straight years, the Giants won it, and then the Washington Redskins won the championship. And then in 92, the Cowboys won it. So it was 3 teams in the NFC East.
Yeah.
That were just loaded. And then the Philadelphia Eagles at that time with Buddy Ryan and that group, they were loaded with talent as well.
Yeah.
We needed to get through the East and become the beast in the East. So those 3 teams I just named, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Redskins, the Eagles, my God, like there were some rivalries there. And it wasn't just easy rivalry. These are hard fought games.
Yeah.
And then on the outside of that was San Francisco in the NFC Championship, who they played the easy. But it was about those 4 teams. And as time went on, I would say, and I think the rivalry really has grown over the last 7 or 8 years, has been with the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the big Cowboys rival. And I can't look, I know the Eagle fans, and if you're out there, Eagle fans, I don't care. I know you don't like me, and I don't like you either.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Darren, thank you so much for joining us and sharing so much about leadership transition, finding joy in different places, being part of a team, and so many things that apply to so many different people. So thank you again for coming on and joining us here on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for joining us for the follow-up. To learn more about today's guest, go to premierspeakers.com. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen.